Okay, so hi, Jo. Thank you for speaking with me today.
Hello, lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me here.
Okay. So if I just start by introducing Parents Portal, and then I'll have you do the same for Affinity Hub.
Okay.
So Parents Portal is basically a one-stop shop for parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities. From 0 to 25 years old. Our goal with our platform is to help our ever-growing community navigate the world of disability by bringing helpful resources and sources of support like yourself to their attention that might be relevant for them. So, if you'd like to introduce your platform.
Okay. Just to say, much needed what you're doing. Absolutely. It's so hard for parents to find the information that they need. And that's why I set up affinityhub.uk, which signposts to emotional support for parent carers. And I'll also talk about my book a bit later on, but it kind of all fed into all the work that I've done is kind of built on my work from affinityhub.uk.
Okay, so can you tell me just about like why or how you decided to start it? Like what was the final clinch that you were like, this is how I want to help people?
I think from my own experience being a parent carer, so my son, eldest son is 14, and he has cerebral palsy, a learning disability and autism. And I felt very much thrown into this new world that I didn't know where to go for support, what to do. And gradually, as I got talking to more parent carers, and then I started working in the field of supporting parent carers, I realized it was quite hard for parents to know where they could go, the specific emotional support that they really got the context of what life is like as a parent carer. So I'd heard from some parent carers they'd been referred to general counsellors who didn't always get it. Not all, often quite supportive, but sometimes just didn't quite get the context. And then I started wondering, well, there must be professionals out there with this knowledge and with this experience. So I wrote an article for a counselling journal and got lots of responses back from people working in this field. So that's why I thought if I set it all up on one website that parents can go to and find out where that specialist support is.
Yep, fab. As you say, I think yours is definitely needed as well because it's never clear, especially when you're thrown into the world and you're not expecting, to have to deal with all these additional things come the birth of a child. I think like you are just bombarded and you're like you don't know where to look. So I think making it as easily signposted as possible just helps alleviate that like sort of overwhelmed feeling a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also often so much of the support around you as a parent is focused on the child. What does the child need? How can you support the child? Blah, blah, blah. And parents are just forgotten. So I really also wanted to kind of raise the profile of, parents' well-being is important, not just so that you can support your child better. I mean, although that is a factor, it's important in its own right, So that was something that was really quite important to me to kind of raise awareness of.
Absolutely. So do you feel like your background as a counselling psychologist helped better prepare you in any way for becoming a SEND parent, or do you feel like there's no way you can ever be more prepared than completely unprepared?
I don't know. There were some things that I think it helped in terms of knowing, well, I say this, I was going to say knowing the system to some extent, but I did not realize just how the lack of coordination across different systems, health, education, and social care, I was quite shocked. So I'd worked in the NHS before in a GP surgery, and it felt very like the GPs knew the families and knew their patients. And then suddenly you're in this massive system with hospital appointments, and it's really, quite disorientating. So in some way it helped, but in some ways I was quite shocked at how hard it was to find the support that you needed, getting bombarded with all this information from different professionals and having to really make up your own mind about what was going to work, and finding ways to have kind of a boundary around you that you're not overwhelmed with everything going on around you. So that's a really difficult question to answer. It kind of helped, but it sort of didn't at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like there's not really any way to feel prepared, I suppose, because every situation is going to be unique to the individual. So, you could give advice to somebody else, so you could get advice from somebody, and it wouldn't apply to your specific situation. So I don't suppose there is any way to better prepare yourself for that sort of situation, because I suppose nobody plans for that, do they? They sort of.
Well, no, I mean, I guess more generally, if there was more awareness of disability and different in the world anyway, we'd perhaps all be a little bit more prepared, whatever happens. And it also depends where you are geographically. So I think there can be different services in different places. So some parent carers I've spoken to have found really good supportive services, but it's just a one-off in their area. So often, it really is just a case of getting to know what's available, talking to other parent carers and finding out what there is around near you.
Yeah, exactly. There is so much variation from place to place and situation to situation, as you say. So it is hard to sort of advise one and another. But what's the one thing you would say you wish somebody had told you at the beginning of your journey, or what's the one piece of advice that you would give somebody who's maybe struggling emotionally, say, for having come to terms with their child having additional needs?
I think one of the things that's been a big motivator for me for all my work, and I guess in a way this is where my profession did help, the background in kind of acknowledging emotions, and emotions aren't always positive and happy, and sometimes we have a whole array of emotions, and that's okay. That's really very normal and very understandable. And I think I wanted someone to say that to me. I wanted someone to ask, "How are you?" in all the professional meetings that I was at regarding my son. I think I wanted someone just to say, and how are you? That would have been quite a simple way to acknowledge that it can be tough at times, particularly in the early days. So I want to say something about, you may feel a whole array of emotions, and that's okay. But don't layer on guilt for feeling, if you feel a bit down or a bit overwhelmed, sometimes don't layer it on with guilt about feeling that, because that doesn't help, So I think there's something about just acknowledging and naming the emotions that you may be feeling helps it become more manageable, and speaking to others in the same situation, feeling the same way, can really help, that you're not alone.
Yes. I think there is a.
Sorry.
Go on. Go on.
One of the things that so I did a survey on Affinity Hub just to ask people about their kind of common emotions, and one of the most common things. So I asked about what advice would you give to other parent carers, and one of the expressions that kept coming through was "take it day by day," and I really really like that, because you just don't know. You could have a good night's sleep and you feel confident and you're ready to face the world. Then something terrible happens, or you're struggling to get school for your child, and you just can feel absolutely devastated.
Yes.
And that's kind of this. People talk about this roller coaster, and I think that's part of the experience, because we're just buffeted around by the things that are going on around us. So yeah, take it day by day, and that's what I called my book. I called it Day by Day: Emotional Wellbeing in Parents of Disabled Children. So just acknowledging that these emotions kind of come and go, and it's an ongoing project to look after your well-being. It's not just do this and everything will be fine. It's ongoing. It's every day. It's little things that can just make life a little bit easier.
Yeah. 100%. So, was there a specific point in your parenting journey that you decided, right, I'm going to write a book. I want to document how I'm feeling. I want to document my journey for other people. Was there a certain thing that clinched that for you, or was it just like a accumulation of multiple things, and you were just like one day like, oh, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I think it's a hard question to answer, because I think it was accumulation. I kept thinking, why is no one talking about this? Why is there no book out there where I can read about this? So it was accumulation. I found it quite helpful to write about my own experiences. And I I think a lot of parent carers can find that almost like journaling or writing down your story in a way. I think there is something therapeutic about that. But I was writing bits and pieces of the book over many years, actually. And following, so I did this survey on Affinity Hub asking parents about their emotions, and there was an outpouring of emotions. And I just thought, okay, people are feeling things and have got nowhere to express this. So I wanted to research that a little bit more. So I did doctorate research, which kind of then fed into my book. But what surprised me is when I started doing that research, I suddenly had access to these academic libraries. And there were hundreds and hundreds of studies about the emotional pressures that parent carers are under. Mothers 1.5 times more likely to have depression than other mothers, the risk for mental health. And I just thought, I have never seen this. I've never heard this. And I was really quite frustrated about that. And I was in the mental health field. I think, why isn't this research getting to the people that need to hear it and need to know that it's understandable that you may be struggling at times? Not all the time. There's lots of papers as well about positives parenting a disabled child, but there's a lot about the negatives. And so I really wanted to bring some of that research to parents themselves. So I've referenced quite a lot of studies in the book as well. So yeah, it was an ongoing thing. But then through my doctoral research and interviewing parents in depth about their experiences and what helped, that really adds to the book, bringing it to life. Because it's all very well saying, look after your well-being, go on a mindfulness course. But I wanted to know, do parent carers actually find that helpful? What are they actually using in their day-to-day life? And that's what I've tried to kind of express, practical things that help.
So as well, you've kind of touched on this, but obviously you sort of wrote the book to help other parents, but in doing so, you sort of helped yourself in a way as well. So it's like, win-win situation in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that
find-
actually, because something that came out really clearly in my research talking to parent carers is that they really want to help other parents. They really want to help people, perhaps, in an earlier stage. They don't want people to feel like they did if they felt kind of alone or confused, and this desire to help others is huge in our community. It's amazing, amazing. As long as it doesn't make you burn out helping other people, you also need to help yourself as well. But I did find it helpful writing, discovered things about myself and my journey as I was writing, but also wanting to give a kind of compass for other parents.
That sounds really good because, as you say, like I think with being a STEM parent, I think there is a sort of increased empathy because your eyes are open to sort of a separate world, aren't they, that you hadn't really experienced before. So you just naturally become more aware of things and more empathetic towards like the little things that others haven't had to ever think about really. And then there's that thing with mental health generally where, if you're going through something, you try your best to make sure that others don't have to experience it because you know how it feels. So you don't want anybody else to feel the same. So I think that makes sense as to why, there is so much like support and wanting to help one another in that community.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you just want to give like an overview of like what the content of your book for people who maybe haven't read it yet, but basically a sales pitch, why would they want to read it?
Okay, I'll show you a copy of it.
Okay.
So this is it. This is my book, Day by Day, Emotional Wellbeing in Parents of Disabled Children. And yeah, if that's okay, I'll just give a kind of overview of how I structured the chapters. So the first chapter, I talk about my own experience, very traumatic, difficult birth with my son, and then just feeling really lost at sea and not sure where to turn. But also, in that, I want to kind of give people hope. You do find your way. You do find your way, and you can. But sometimes you need a little bit of support along the way, and that's okay, and that's understandable. And then I talk a bit about what emotional well-being is, because it can be quite confusing, and people will talk about self-care. Is it this? Is it that? And it's really quite a general term about things that you will do to look after yourself. And I developed a mnemonic, I think it's called Spectra. And I can talk a little bit about that later, but just trying to kind of categorize different things that helped look after your well-being. And then I also talk in chapter 3 about the context, because it's so key for parent carers, the world that we're in. You have to be aware of what's going on around you. Suddenly, as you said, your eyes are open to kind of disability, discrimination, stigma, all this contact with all these services that aren't always as helpful as we'd like them to be, or aren't available. So in a way, you can't talk about well-being without thinking about the context that we're in. It has such a huge impact. And then I talk some more in detail about the different emotions that people may have. So some negative, as I mentioned already, heightened risk of depression and anxiety and stress. Stress is always the thing that parent carers seem to be finding the most overwhelming. And then I also talk about the positive emotions, because there are positives. It doesn't always feel like it when you're in the middle of it, but there are positives people commonly identify, you know, greater appreciation for life, a different perspective, this love and kind of closeness with your child or your family, you know, finding who your real friends are. There can be lots of positives of personal growth. And I would certainly say that for me in my experience. And then I touch on relationships, because they're so important, relationships with family, friends, or other parent carers, the relationships with professionals. So although my book's written for parent carers, there's lots in there for professionals that really need to have, it may help them have a better understanding of kind of where parents are. And then at the end, I look a bit to the future, that there can be some difficult futures for some people, but the importance of finding a kind of sense of purpose and meaning in your life, whatever that is. That may be for some people a child, or it may be work, or it may be something totally different. But this is so often shown to be really helpful for well-being, a sense of purpose and meaning. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think, as you said earlier, there is so much variation from, you know, individual case to individual case. But I think one thing that is more universal is the sort of roller coaster of emotions that you go through, no matter what a diagnosis is or what the severity is. Everyone sort of has that sort of, even, you know, even if you haven't got a disabled child, even if you're just, you know, you're a first time mom or a first time dad, and it's so new. So then add on the extra, oh, you need to go to this appointment, you need to get this checked, this isn't working properly, then it's just, so one thing I think people can come together on is them sort of like emotions that sort of hit you. So I think having a book about the emotional well-being is something that people can sort of form a community around and sort of really bond over and make, as you say, make people feel less alone and more like their emotions are valid and normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And up and down emotions, as you say, they're part of life, you know, and sometimes there can be a push. So people talk about a toxic positivity. You should only have positive mantras in life, and positive, you know, life isn't like that, of course, you know, we all have ups and downs, but it just might be that for some parent carers, because of what's going on around them, the ups and downs are higher and lower for longer, and to recognize that and find ways to help.
So you touched on it briefly at the beginning of your like overview, but can you just tell me like what your mnemonic of Spectra stands for and why you use it?
Okay, so the Spectra, I designed this out of my research, so talking to parent carers about what were the key things that really helped their well-being. And I wanted to come up with something that was really easy for parent carers to remember. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you might be able to just think, oh, Spectra, what am I missing today? What can I do today? So they stand for, the S is sense of purpose and meaning, which I've already touched on, finding something that really drives you in life and really fulfills you, and you're entitled to that. Just because you're a parent, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed that. And as a parent carer, you know that it's terrible that you think of yourself. Absolutely not. Find your sense of purpose and meaning. Positive others, so connecting with those, whoever they may be. So for some people, it's family. For some people, they felt that I spoke to felt quite upset that family really didn't get them. So actually finding others in the parent carer network was really, really important. So these positive other people that call you when you need to, or, you know, that you know are there for you. And the E is empowerment. So there's something about feeling, we can feel quite helpless as parent carers. We're against this massive system that doesn't always help us. So feeling empowered, knowing kind of your rights, where you can go for things, what's not acceptable, and kind of just often chatting to other parent carers and thinking, well, no, that's not right, being fobbed off by whatever. But also feeling empowered, perhaps from getting a child, the diagnosis, sometimes found that quite empowering, then they understood what they were dealing with. Or even if there wasn't a diagnosis, just getting this better understanding of your child, which links into the C of the Spectra, which was child, and this really stepping into your child's world. And the parents that I spoke to, when they really got what their child needed and could deliver that, it really helped their own well-being as well, because there's this sense of achievement that you know what you need to do, and we don't like feeling unsure and uncertain, and it's not a nice feeling. So this was really quite important to the parents that I spoke to, and that's certainly been the case for my journey as well. Really struggling to understand my son initially, and then when I kind of got it through my own chatting to people or reading, it's really helped me to better support him. And then the T of Spectra is time that is mine, which I think all parents can relate to. We need some time for ourselves, whether that's 5 minutes, sit down, a cup of tea, or whether it's planning going out to meet friends, or whatever it is. Well-being is personal to you. But making sure you kind of guarantee, you protect the boundary, that time that is yours. And then the R is replenish and recalibrate. I refer to this as having a Swiss Army knife of self-care activity. So it could be different things. So it may be, people often, joke about self-care. Does that mean lying in the bath? Well, it might be, or it might be taking a painting class, or your favorite music and dancing around in the kitchen, or whatever, doing kickboxing. Someone was telling me, but just doing these activities. So you make the time, you do these activities for you. And then the A is awareness. So there were two aspects of this that seemed to come out. One was awareness of your own emotions, so that then if you're in touch with your own emotions, you recognize when actually you need a little bit of extra support. So when you start to feel, I'm sinking a bit now, do I need to go to bed earlier, or is it that I need something else to give me that lift? So being in touch with your emotions, but that takes kind of having a bit of time and space to even do that. So it's overwhelming. If you're overly busy, you don't really get that headspace to do that. So trying to be in touch with your emotions, aware of what you need. But also there was something that we've already talked about, that a lot of the parent carers I spoke to, they had this awareness of, I've called it awareness of the human condition, that there are things we can't control. There are things that happen that we didn't see coming. There are things that are difficult. The parents I interviewed said, I've realized that life can be brutal. And that's quite a kind of, whoa, open your eyes and, oh my gosh, life is short, fragile. But actually out of that can come this real appreciation of the time that we have, what really matters, and getting a better perspective on life and what's really important. So that's the Spectra that came out of me interviewing parent carers and then analysing their information. These were things that were helpful. And you'll be doing different things on different days, and that's fine. But sometimes we may get stuck in a certain thing that then stops helping. So try different things as well.
So it's not always like the same things that can help you for the entire time. Sometimes you have to like change it up as your situation might change as well. And
absolutely. And there were certain things that also came out about, in a traumatizing situation, people tended to want to withdraw. So that, that may be different. There'll be different things that you need on different days.
Yeah, I suppose people sort of react to sort of trauma and things in different ways, don't they? So it depends on, what works best for you, in terms of whether you do withdraw or whether you try and sort of overcompensate and go the opposite way and sort of, try and make out everything's okay and everything's amazing and I'm handling everything so well, and then you sort of, as you say, burn out and crash. And So you need to, that's where the awareness comes in, I suppose, and recognizing when, you do need to sort of take time for yourself and take a break and things.
Yeah. And some things may be helpful. I mean, also, being in denial. I think I was massively in denial initially. And some of the parents I spoke to were, and that was quite helpful to begin with. So some things may work initially, or withdrawal at a time of trauma may work initially, but then you might get stuck in that. And actually, then you need to really make the effort to start connecting with people again. So yeah, it's an ongoing. I always say well-being is an ongoing, dynamic, constantly working on it. But for benefit, it's beneficial to prioritize it.
Absolutely. We've had a question come through. Aside from signposting parents to your website, what would be one thing that you recommend professionals do or say to support families?
Oh, that's a big question. I guess it really depends kind of where and who and lots of different variables on that. I think it's quite important for professionals to just humanly connect with a parent carer, to help them access the services they need, to acknowledge, even just go, this looks like it's hard for you at the moment. What can we do? Just human connection, really. And on the website affinityhub.uk, along with another counsellor and a psychotherapist, we wrote some guidance for professionals, so for education, health and social care professionals, on supporting emotional wellbeing. So maybe that would be quite useful. But we're saying be aware of the emotions, because if you're not aware of the emotions that family care is going through, and then you come in with a comment that isn't meant in a negative way, but they're absolutely exhausted, they feel terrible, we feel very raw. We can feel very raw. And so professionals having a sensitivity to that, I think, can really help build up trust, which is key.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because I think, as you touched on earlier, it can be quite hard when members of your family or your closest friends who you previously might have thought, understood you and knew you best, then can't relate to the experience you've suddenly gained. So then you sort of feel separated from that, because you can't then sort of express how you're feeling or what you're going through to them, because they don't understand. So to have people that can understand and can support is really crucial, especially when there is, unfortunately, that sense of guilt if you do sort of think of yourself as the parent for once rather than your child. You feel like you constantly have to only think about your child and forget about me. But it is obviously important to think about yourself as well, because you can't help your child if you yourself are suffering, really, can you? So
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I would say about just what help to give, it is quite hard to gauge, because it is an overused word, journey, but I think it really is a journey. And what you might say to someone very early on in this journey would be very different from what you say later on. And I appreciate that's quite hard for professionals to know how to gauge things, but a sensitive kind of asking, what is it that you need? How are you? How are you? That would be nice.
A lot of times we get asked that in day-to-day life anyway, don't we? But people don't really take it seriously. It's just like another way of saying hello nowadays. So not many people expect anything other than, I'm okay, how are you? If you suddenly say, well, actually, I know I'm not okay, and then you see them like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to actually, tell me the truth, kind of thing. So I think it's important to, when you're asking somebody if they're okay, to actually want to, you do actually want to know the answer, and you do actually want to help them if they're not okay.
How are you really?
Yes,
and I did wonder
exactly.
whether professionals sometimes didn't want to ask because they didn't know where to signpost people to. But often I think just having that conversation with a professional of, care and concern can actually sometimes mean a referral on somewhere else isn't necessary.
Absolutely. So obviously part of you writing this book was, obviously, as you said, to journal your own experiences and deal with your own emotions. Did you find it difficult, given your background as a counselling psychologist, to be then going through the emotions that you'd normally be helping others with and advising others with? Did it help you that you had that sort of background in helping yourself, or did it make you feel sort of, oh, why am I going through this? I should know how to deal with it because I advise other people?
Yeah, I think there was an element of that. And I also felt I should have known how to support my son. So I think in that
Right.
way, being professional that didn't really help me. And but I knew something wasn't right. There was a real jarring of my experience of what the heck's going on? Why is there this wall of silence around me? What's going on? And so I think that knowing that I felt something needed to kind of change, something wasn't quite working. So that did help me. Being a strong believer in the power of emotions and reading your own emotions definitely was helpful. But I also, human beings, we have ups and downs, and that's just part of being human. But I think then constantly seeing this battle services for whatever it is, I could see it was wearing me down, but I started to see other parent carers really being worn down. And so often the focus was on the practical. How do I get more physio? How do I do this? And I think part of me was then really suspecting why is no one saying about the emotion, how the parents feeling? Yeah. So I think it helped me, even in the midst of chaos and darkness. I could see that something, there was a kind of path to do something. And I think so many parent carers are motivated to do something to help others, as we've already talked about, but to try and make the system a bit better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it is so important to obviously highlight emotions rather than just, as you say, practical side, because they kind of have to obviously go hand in hand. So I suppose when you do get like positive feedback from parents who have read your book, I think it probably means that a little bit more, because it's obviously helping to boost their emotional well-being is obviously a massive factor in them being able to achieve the practical side of things as well. So I feel like
absolutely, yeah. It's been lovely to have comments from people saying I feel heard, I feel valued, and it's lovely for me to hear that as well, because then I think my experience is heard and valued as well. So
it helps
really
your
nice.
emotional well-being in turn, doesn't it? Like to make know you've helped others feel good makes you feel good. So it's good in that sense.
Absolutely. And also suspecting that something wasn't right and then
Yes.
realizing it's not, you're kind of validated in some way.
Yeah, and addressing it to that extent and to that reach so that other people can sort of experience your experience with you as they're reading, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
Is a big thing. So we've had, over the course of our conversation, we've had a lot of people saying that they are really intrigued by your book now, and they really
lovely.
already feel validated before even reading, and they're going to go out and buy it. So could you just give us a overview of where they can buy it or what format it comes in, like ebook, paperback?
Thank you for these lovely comments. Really, it does mean so much to me, because it's such a personal kind of thing that I've gone into and talked about, and I really appreciate these comments. So the book is available on Amazon, Smith's, Waterstones. I think if you just search up Day by Day Joanna Griffin, you should be able to find it. It's also on Kindle on Amazon as well. And via affinityhub.uk as well, you can get a link to it as well.
That's great. So thank you for this. I think that's a good place to round off, if that's okay with you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for this conversation. It's been really insightful. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you. And it's so nice to speak to people that really understand
exactly,
as well. So that's really helpful.
It makes such a difference, doesn't it, to speak to people sort of in the same sort of community and that can relate. It's just you feel heard more, like other people will listen, but it's that level of understanding as well just makes it much easier to open up, I would say.
Yeah. It's the getting it, isn't it? Other people that get
it. Absolutely. So this conversation will, for anybody who couldn't watch us live right now, will be saved on the Facebook page, and we'll also be uploading it onto our YouTube channel shortly as well. So there's 2 places that you can find it, just to let everybody know. But yeah, thank you, Jo. I've really enjoyed it, and we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Bye-bye.